Butane stoves. Will a butane stove be a good choice for safe indoor cooking during power outages or grid down scenarios? In this video, we will consider these things you see on the screen and find the answer.
So let's set up a butane stove and see how easy it is. Of course, we use butane fuel. The fuel goes in here. On the fuel, you'll notice there's a little cutout right here. That cutout lines up with this little piece on the stove. So now the fuel's in, close the lid, that locks it into place, and then it's ready to cook. Okay, so taking it down when you're finished, open it, release the lock, and it's out. So is it easy to set up and take down? Yes. Some butane stoves are going to be easier to clean than others, and here's why. All of them, the fuel bay will open and you can get anything out of there should you spill something in it easily. But here's the difference. Some of them, like this one, this comes off and you can wipe it down, clean it, however you need to do it. And should you spill something inside, you can clean it out inside as well. Some of them, like this one on the other hand, this does not come off. And so it would prevent you from spilling stuff inside, but in the cracks, it's going to be really difficult to get things out should you spill things in there. Overall, they are easy to clean. Is the heat easily adjustable? Now I already have this one going, it's on high. So yes, the heat is easily adjustable on butane stoves. Fuel is easily and readily available. Is it safe to store? This is some of my butane fuel. I do have it stored indoors. Butane is safe to store indoors. I just showed you some that I have stored indoors and have had it stored for quite a long time. And now a little bit about butane fuel in general. You can expect it to have a storage life of at least 8 years, maybe several more than that. When you store it, it needs to be stored above 32 degrees and preferably less than 120 degrees. When the temperature gets to be near freezing, the butane may not work very well. That's one of the drawbacks for butane, especially if you're going to use it in a cooler setting or outdoors in the wintertime and so forth. You can expect to get about 2 hours or a little more burn time if you use it on high. That time will go up to about 4 hours or a little more if you use it on low. Most of us will use the stove on various settings, so you're going to get 2 to 4 hours per container of fuel. And butane, like any of the other fuels, has the potential to release carbon monoxide. And the biggest factor in regard to carbon monoxide with any fuel has to do with ventilation and the amount of oxygen that's available for the fuel to burn. So for the butane stoves and all the others, you do need to have a well ventilated area. Butane is a very easy fuel to use. Will a butane stove and fuel do the things that you want or need it to do? So we're going to put it to the test and do several types of cooking, frying, and so forth. Already have the beef stew in the kettle. It's a small kettle, but it's a 1-serving food. You can use much larger kettles on the stoves than this one, depending upon how many people you're cooking for. There is a size limit, however, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. So I'm going to turn the heat down. So the temperature got up to over 160 degrees, 2 to 3 minutes at most. So yes, the butane stove will most definitely heat canned food, but you might need it to do other things as well. Just a little earlier I said there's a limit to how large of a container that you can use on a butane stove. let me show you what I'm talking about before we go further with the cooking. This one has a half a gallon of water, which is what we're going to do next. See if it will boil the water. It fits on there just fine, no problems. Something this large. When you use a butane stove, the container should not cover the fuel area. That's what all of the manufacturers of butane stoves say. This one even says it right on this lid. There you go. So that's what I meant by there is a limit to how large of a container that you can use. I'm not trying to give you a recipe for how to make boiled water. I'm trying to show you whether or not these stoves will boil water. That's what you need to know. I do have it turned on high, and if your intentions are merely to boil water for whatever reason, cooking, making drinking water, you're going to want to do it as quickly as possible. Well, this is after about 3.5 minutes. Somewhere between 5 and 6 minutes. And it is to a hard rolling boil. I'll take the water off and then we'll try to brew some coffee. Next, we're going to percolate some coffee. I'm not going to try to tell you guys how strong to make your coffee. I like mine strong. And of course, the longer you percolate your coffee, the stronger it's going to get. But it can get to the point where it will have a very, very bitter, almost a burnt taste. If you like it that way, that's great. I kind of like mine that way. And I do use a coffee filter when I percolate coffee if I have it available. And of course, if your percolator, like my Stanley, has one of these on the handle, take this off before you do the percolating of the coffee. That is after about 4.5 minutes. And when it started percolating, I did turn the heat down just a little bit. So the longer you let it percolate, the stronger it's going to get. And if you haven't percolated coffee before, you'll have to repeat this process a few times till you get your method or your routine down so you get the coffee the way that you like it. Look at that. That looks really good. The last thing that we're going to do with the butane stove is we're going to fry some sausage and eggs. Those look really good. So our sausages are ready. The stove is on one of the lower settings of heat, and so I did bust the yolks. And there is our sausage and eggs, which is going to be my lunch. As of yet, there hasn't been any notice of carbon monoxide with any of the things that we've done with the butane stove. The vent on the stove is not on. So there hasn't been any carbon monoxide that's been detectable released. Having used butane stoves for several years on and off, I've never had an issue with carbon monoxide, but there's always that chance, which is why you got to have the carbon monoxide detector, preferably one that gives you a digital readout. My checklist. This checklist you've seen in the video is a resource that I've put together to help folks evaluate a stove for indoor use before actually buying the stove. We're in the process of making it available to anyone that wants one. It will be a downloadable resource for you, and it will be free. It will be available in just a few days, so watch our upcoming videos for a link to the checklist if you'd like to have one.
Will a butane stove be a good choice for safe indoor cooking during power outages or grid down scenarios?
All of the criteria are checked, so that tells me that a butane stove would be a very good choice for a primary stove for your grid down kitchen. But you got to make that decision. Have a list of some advantages and disadvantages that you might want to consider. Some of the advantages of the butane stove: it's very easy to use, it's easy to set up, it's easy to take down. The fuel is easy to use, and the butane stove will do everything that your regular stove will do as far as the stovetop goes. They will also work very well for boiling water for whatever reason you need to boil water, like to make safe drinking water, or maybe even for putting in a tub of water to make the water warm. And will boil a lot at one time. And something that is really important, especially in a grid down world, the stove itself is very stable to work with and to work on. That is very important. Some disadvantages, I only have one, and that is that the fuel won't work very well, or maybe not at all, if the temperatures get down to freezing or below. But if you're only going to be using it indoors and you have a source of heat, that probably is not going to be a problem. For more safe to use indoor cooking options during grid down scenarios, you can check this video out.